Hello and welcome to the Change Gang podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change in your life. I'm here to guide you, inform you, and hopefully help you to triumph over trauma and the long list of symptoms that come along with it. This podcast series is to bring knowledge, share stories, and open up conversation around hope for those of you that suffer with the difficulties that present themselves in your life, from diagnosed or undiagnosed trauma. Labeled or not, I know you need help, and so do those that have graciously taken the time to have these conversations with me. So let's get to it. Welcome to the week, Change Gang. I'm continuing on and just trying to be supportive with whoever needs it this time of year. And so last week I reposted an episode that I did on PTSD and information around catch with Sarah. And today I'm sharing the rest of that. And I just want you to know that we are all here. If you go to catch, any one of us are here to help you, to support you, to encourage you, to help you heal. If you need someone, please reach out. Please. And I hope that everything is going well for you right now, that this time of year is a good time of year for you, whether you're excited or just in a moment of peace with it, but definitely that you're not in a difficult place with it. That's what I hope for you. If you are, and you hear this, know that I'm here. Reach out to me. All the information, you can find me under my name just about anywhere. If you Google me, you'll find me. And so know that. Know that. And if I'm not the right person for you, I will connect you with someone that I believe can really help you. Maybe more than one someone. So you'll have your own choice. But you can go look on the website too, catchptsd.com, and find people there to support you. And the more I can educate and help and support, the better, I think. So here we go. Here's the rest of it. Happy day to you. All right. Welcome to the Week Change Gang. We are continuing today the conversation with Sarah Yuen all about catch and more. Here we go.
You find sometimes that you stop at the end of 6 sessions and you say, okay, well, look, it's like pulling hair out trying to get this information. So we'll just kind of do some lovely healing for 4 weeks, just take you into a lovely restful state. And then they come back and they're like, there's a voice in me telling me we've got to carry on, we've got to continue. And I imagine it always that the ego part has been enjoying this exploration, but doesn't want to give you its Lego box, but it likes the fact that someone's talking about it or to it. And then suddenly that stops. And now you're just talking about white lights and standing in gratitude pyramids or something. And he's like, no, what about me? And so then it will re-engage. And I do find that, or it will re-engage by itself. Like I've had some where people have said, okay, well, let's take a break after 6 sessions. Just let me think about what I've seen and what I've heard. And then they'll have a series of dreams. Like every night they'll get another bit of the dream and then it will just get delivered to them in a dream. And I had one client say, are you annoyed with me because it didn't come in hypnosis? I'm like, I don't care where it comes. It can come at the supermarket till for all I care. I had a lady ring me from the supermarket till saying, oh my God, I realized I never loved myself. And I was like, oh, did you want to have a chat? I can't talk to you. I'm in the supermarket. But I just realized it. And the way you were talking then about your lady who's having to make massive changes in her life, what I find about hypnotherapy, which is so wonderful, is you get rapport with your client very quickly because the whole process of hypnotherapy is so nice. It feels so lovely. I mean, a lot of my clients come out saying, oh, it's a legal high. And it feels so nice. And the whole thing about hypnotherapy is we're just there as taxi drivers, bus drivers. We're just there to help you get to the point where you can understand yourself. And therefore, we're not judgmental. So we certainly would never say you need to give up alcohol or you need to stop being so angry or you need to stop taking drugs or pot or weed. We'd never say that because this is a personal series of decisions that will lead you to your goal. And we'll stand next to you. And when you tell us to get lost, we'll get lost. And when you tell us you want us back, we'll come back. And that to me is very important about catch as well, because there is no no judgment. And also, and maybe we shouldn't say this, but most of us have been there. I think virtually every single therapist on Catch at some point has wanted to stick pins in their eyes or has felt so low that they're never getting back up again. And so when the client says, I just can't do it. I have clients who come to my sessions and they sit down in front of Zoom and they open up Zoom and they look at me and then they go, not today. And they press end. And then they ring back deeply apologetic. And I'm like, it's fine. I know that feeling. I've had many a not today feeling. And so they kind of feel like I'm embraced by this person and they're not too much in my face, but if I want them to be, they will be. And that is my ethos of hypnotherapy. And when I tried to teach it through the course of deep hypnotherapy, all the people like yourself who felt that and had been told, be objective, don't be empathetic, know the difference between empathy and sympathy, don't get too deep with your clients. I felt all of you just sigh and say, oh, thank God. Now I can wrap my arms around this person virtually and say, I'm here, but not too much. And they suddenly got something to cling to. And one of my ladies said that I felt like I was down a well and you were at the top and all these different parts to me were at the top and you'd thrown a rope down and you were saying, come on, come up. And she said, I wasn't sure if I wanted to come up, but I could see you up there and I could see everyone up there and I was trying to decide, but I just held the rope so I didn't fall any deeper. And I thought, what a lovely analogy.
I love that. And I love that it is so diverse. For all the commonalities that Catch therapists have, each one of them is different and they have had different experiences. A lot of them have had trauma or difficulties or because they've done this because it's somehow been a part of their life. And thankfully, I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of them and some of them really dive into different directions. Some are really knowledgeable around nutrition and they'll really guide you if that's the area that you need in. Some of them have been in the military. They're very aware of what that situation is like. Some of them are very spiritual and have that type of an air with them. So I love that it does have someone for everyone. I think you can find someone on there to connect with. And if it's not the first person, find the second or the third one, but you will find someone and ask. I think it's really important because what you said too is if it's not us that will do it, we can probably recommend someone in that group that we're aware of or go to someone and say, hey, this is kind of what they're looking for. Who's in that realm? Who's in that area? What's going on? And then we can direct you right to that person, which I think is a wonderful option.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the whole element of online treatment, I think, is something that even back in 2018 was like, really? Does it work? Is it going to work if I'm not sitting in a room with somebody? People think, well, I've got to find someone locally. And how do they know that what they're finding locally is a highly experienced trauma therapist? If you go to a lot of these people, they know your symptoms might scare them because they've never come across that before. And so when I did my first study of UK military subjects, I thought it has to be online, mainly because I was in Spain and they were all in England. But I thought it has to be online because we're going to have to treat so many people and we can't move 2 hours between them to get to the next appointment. And so I did it totally online and to see if it would work. And I think I didn't expect it to be honest. And you think that's only 6 years ago, but I really did not think it would work. And then when every single one of them got better or saw massive change, I was like, wow, it really does work online. And now I work totally online. Some of you work totally online. And there is no difference. There's not even any difference between the energy that seems to flow between the therapist and the person. It's as if you're next to each other. And so I think what's so lovely about Catch is you can literally just sit there with a cup of coffee and go through each person's profile and think, oh, she looks nice. She's got a video. Oh, that's nice. Oh, I like the grass behind her. Yeah, that's nice. And they can pick someone and it doesn't matter if they're from New Zealand or if they're from Canada or whether they're from Mauritius. And you think, oh, Mauritius, I love Mauritius. Oh, maybe I'll choose that one and then I can go on holiday. And so it really doesn't matter who you choose or where they're practicing. And they will meet you in cyberspace and you will get the same relationship and the same support as if they were living around the corner. And that to me is an amazing thing. And when BetterHelp started, I must admit, I was like, really? You're just going to go on, pick someone at random and then you're going to pray that hopefully they'll probably work for you and you're going to go on and get your 50 minutes and who thought this would work? But then again, I was also the person who told Apple that Apple iTunes wouldn't work when I was working in the corporate world. So I had form of telling people things won't work. So now I look at Catch and I think, yes, there are people in Australia who are desperate for help with PTSD. There are so many soldiers in Canada that are literally falling apart, let alone all the civilians who are dealing with it. You know, just these people who've been through endless wars. We have a chap who's training with us at the moment from Ukraine, who's helping with all the soldiers coming back in Ukraine. And we have people from India, and we have people from all over the world who are sharing knowledge on how do I help these people who've been through so much. And therefore, I just think what an amazing thing. We're going to end up with 200, 300, 400, 500 therapists on Catch. And when I started this, I wanted to take a whole group of therapists to the British Ministry of Defence and say, look, stop messing about with these superficial therapies and let's do what they did in World War I and World War II, which worked, and let's fix these people. Let's give them their lives back. Enough 22-year-olds committing suicide. And I tried, and they said no. Now I think, well, okay, we're going to go back 500 strong, and we're going to put those case histories down, and we're going to say, look, you have to help these people that you broke in the first place. And that is my aim. And it took Peter Horwell 18 years to make the National Health Service accept hypnotherapy for IBS. IBS is comorbid with PTSD. If you fix IBS, you fix PTSD. So we're 5 years in, 13 to go.
There we go. We're going to do that. I love that. And I love that whoever you pick on Catch, whoever you pick, know that the rest of that group is standing behind them, supporting you too. Every one of them. It's not just that you have that one person. You have this whole group of people holding you, supporting you energetically with, oh, we've got a problem. Here, we can help you. Okay, we can help you. We've got this. So your therapist has that support, which means you have that support. And so it's always going to be, you're going to get where you need to be. And I love that.
And we do free hypnotherapy for each other, don't we? Because we enjoy it. And some of us have still got things to clear. And I think others do the same. When a freebie's coming up, I'll go back to my previous clients or the clients I have at the moment and say, you'd like this, come and join us. And so it's not just the grouping of professionals. We kind of meshed everybody in together when we play with some past life regression. Anybody can come. And so it's very much a supportive. And when you say, I thought you were talking about me when you said we have these people behind us, because for me, this is unbelievable, this group, because people have listened to what I had to say. That's amazing in the first place. Taken it on board, used it, and then been willing to join in this venture, and then are now willing to talk about how to make it better, how to be the best, how to help people. And as you say, we all hit dead ends, and then somebody just swoops in and says, oh no, I know what's wrong there, it's this. And the rest of us just stand there going, wow, how did you know that? And it's like, oh, I met that 3 weeks ago. It's an amazing group. And I don't know where that exists. Maybe BetterHelp does the same with all their therapists. But I do think that the portal is the key. And we're now marketing heavily, or I am. Not only podcasts, but writing articles for magazines, writing articles for newspapers, getting on everybody else's podcasts. And you've been so kind to invite me. And to try to make people aware. And I think the other thing also, Laura, that's really important is to highlight the cost, because this therapy is cheap. Dreadful thing to say because cheap might not sound valuable, but we all have deliberately kept prices to a point that people can afford. You know, a dinner, a night out, a night in the bar. And we're not out to cripple people financially who are already struggling. And we're not out to charge £250 an hour. And by the way, that was 3 hours. So now you owe me £750. We have prices starting from £60, $80, $100, and also group therapy, where many therapists on Catch are doing group therapy where they allow 10 to 15 people to come at once, and then they can talk between sessions. And some people that's as low as $100 a pound or $200 or pounds for the entire treatment. So we're trying to make it accessible to everybody, even if you're on a pension, even if you're on disability or you're on sickness payment, where you can get better and somebody's not making a fortune off your back.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I totally forgot about like the group stuff. And that's so important because that is so accessible. It's crazy inexpensive for people to go do those. And the ones that are offering them, it's between $50 and $100 for most of them, or $150 for all of the sessions that you go in and do. So if you're at a place where you're just desperate, go do that because it will make a difference in some way, shape or form.
And many of us have recordings online. I know you do, I do, where you can almost do 3 or 4 weeks of treatment before you even engage with the therapist. And I do think it's worth engaging with the therapist. I do think the energy of it is increased. And I do think that sometimes just hearing yourself tell the therapist something makes you think, oh, I didn't realise I felt that way. But you've talked about guilt for half an hour and you think, I didn't even know I was guilty. And so it can be very useful. But yes, you can go on there, you can listen to people, you can decide if you like their voice, because the levels of voice and speed. Somebody used my recording for a client recently because she was having trouble getting him into hypnosis, but mainly because the ego part didn't want to go into hypnosis. It wasn't her fault. And she said, so I put yours on. And he came out and he said, no, I don't like her delivery. I don't like her voice. I don't like the way she puts the intonation on the wrong word. I don't like anything about this woman's voice. And I thought, you need to know that in advance. You need to know whether this person can soothe you to sleep or whether you just want to throttle her by the time you come out. So, and the wonderful thing is that there's 75 voices on Catch. So if you have a particular penchant for the Scottish accent or the Irish accent or whatever, they're there. If you love the Mid-South accent in America, it's there. And that does matter. Matters enormously to allow you to relax.
It does matter. And I am so happy that you're doing this, and I'm so excited that we get to share it with everyone out there as often as we can. And even to people in some of those groups, or when they're looking for something, it's like, go here because there's information. Go here, there's videos. Go here, you'll find the groups. Go here, and you'll find the information. And I love that. And I can't wait to share.
There are a series of subjects about PTSD on that website, and you can watch videos or you can read the stories. There's on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on Substack, Reddit, and so obviously LinkedIn as well. And Rumble, we're about to set up a locals group on Rumble so that people can get extra benefit and extra understanding, questions and answers for PTSD sufferers, especially questions and answers for people living with PTSD sufferers, which is almost worse. And so we're building out a whole community using all the social media outlets that we can, because for us, the most important thing is that we get to everyone who's been diagnosed with PTSD or CPTSD and say, we can help fast.
Yes, yes. And even if it's not diagnosed, even if you're just suffering with the symptoms and you don't know where it's coming from and you're not sure what's going on, come have a conversation. It doesn't cost anything to come have a conversation with just about anyone. So talk and say, is it possible this will help? Or I'm just experiencing. And what I find so often is so interesting is with the people that I work with. Well, I just feel a little this, or I feel a little that, or I'm having headaches, or I'm having this. But when I sit down with them and I go through my list, have a list that I go through when I work with them, actually got it from some of the training, and I end up with a page full of stuff that they're like, yes, oh yeah, I guess yes.
Yeah, that's why you need the therapist, because you can say, oh, I'm a bit sad, I'm a bit lonely, and I feel a bit bad, and I've got pain here, and my heart races and everything. But then when someone gives you a list of 100 things, and you're like, oh dear, I've got 75, then you begin to see that you've been suppressing a lot of what is quite serious, and that it all comes together as something quite serious. And I have real sympathy for GPs and MDs and doctors when somebody walks in and they say, look, I've got these pains in my ankles, they're awful. Oh, and I keep getting a migraine, and my heart's racing like it won't stop. I've got IBS, that's awful. And now and again, I get really, really angry and I can't work out where that anger's coming from. And you can imagine this poor doctor sitting there thinking, well, this doesn't fit anything that I've seen. And I give my own analogy. When I was very sick after being in Sudan and India as a TV reporter, and I came back and I had everything wrong with me, backache, headache, nausea, and every single symptom that they asked I had. And I remember all these doctors standing around my bed thinking, what is wrong with her? I was in the tropical diseases hospital and nothing fit. And then the work experience person at the back of the room said, do you think she's pregnant? And then suddenly it all fell into place. They were like, she doesn't have malaria. She doesn't have, diphtheria. She doesn't have typhoid. You're right. She's pregnant. And I feel like that with hypnotherapy. Somebody will come to you with a smorgasbord of symptoms, and a doctor could not work out what that is. Doesn't have the time to sit there and say, well, what are you eating? How much are you sleeping? What are you actually doing to try and calm these symptoms? What are you taking? And they don't have time, but we do. So like you were saying, you can have a 2-hour consultation. Most of the people on Catch do not charge for consultations. I certainly don't. And when would you get 2 hours with a doctor? For free anyway, but when would you get 2 hours with a doctor where he would try to go through everything. And you mentioned that a lot of people on Catch are quite well up on nutrition and how nutrition affects mental health, which is a whole other field. But when I was doing my training for the people who wanted to come on Catch, there is a large portion of that training which concentrates on the gut and the gut's microbiota and how that affects mental health and how what you eat affects mental health. So everybody on Catch is aware that nutrition is important and can not ladle diets on you and things that you've got to do and not change your entire life, but can just point out what might be making things worse.
Yes, and make some simple suggestions on maybe add this in a little bit to see one of these things, or take that out, or whatever it is. And there isn't a judgment based on that. It's just, here's an idea that might help. Or I dealt with someone the other day who was talking about, well, I do smoke a lot of marijuana, or I do this, or I do that. And I said, do you want to stop, or is that something you want to continue with? Because it's not my decision, it's yours. And I mean, if you want to stop, we can work towards that even more. But if it's something you're okay with and you want to do, that's your deal. I'm not going to judge you for it. You don't have to explain it to me.
And there's not many people who would do that. A lot of people would say, well, you're not allowed to have a joint 3 days before you come, and that can't be something that you do. And I think people know that what they're doing is not healthy. You know, when I get my hand in the fridge at midnight for chocolate, I know that it's not healthy. People know when they're on the third glass of wine, it's probably not a good idea. And as you say, it's just allowing them the space to decide what bits they want to tackle. But I've had people who, they say, oh, I drink quite a lot. And I'm not surprised. I'm not even sure how you're still standing, but I can understand why you drink. And then 3 weeks later, 3 sessions later, they say, I didn't drink this week. But we haven't dealt with that. We haven't done any direct suggestions saying you must not drink. It's just the body naturally saying, okay, I don't really need to drink anymore because I found out what was making me drink in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you speak so eloquently in a lot of the training about so many things. Being those, it's just a symptom. People come in with these heavy things of, oh, there's this alphabet soup of a diagnosis, or there's this alphabet soup of this diagnosis. And you're like, well, that's just a symptom. Ignore it. Do the work. And I love that. I love that because it, as the person on the other end of it, it kind of frees me up to go, oh, I don't have to concentrate on that. I have to concentrate on what I'm doing, on where we're going with this, with basically the protocol that I'm working with and the person that's in front of me. It's not about all the things, the list. It's not about the laundry list. It's about the person and the work. And I love that part of it.
And I think as a hypnotherapist, we feel like the doctors when they come in with 100 symptoms. We don't know where to start. And this protocol is basically a smoosh together of every single thing that clinical hypnotherapists have ever done, smooshed into 6 ways to find a way in to the part of you that needs help. And it is deliberately done that way. And I get a lot of stick on Facebook. I mean, everyone from people saying, oh, you know, you're just a one-trick pony. It's like, yeah, I am a very, very effective one-trick pony. And it's every single session with every single person is completely different, but the method is the same. Every taxi driver gets in the car and drives you to where you need to go or you want to go and goes a different route every time, and so you see different things. But his job is still to simply drive you to your destination. And I see that our job is simply to drive the person to their destination. And we have a method of doing that. His is a car. Ours is a cadence of our voice and a way that we talk and a way that we relax people. And there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If they were doing that in 1918 and they were taking people out of trenches and turning their life around, yeah, I'm having that.
Yes, I love that. I love that. You're right. It is tailored. As much as we have that base protocol, that base way of doing things, it is always tweaked and tailored, and the words or the little add-ins or the little whatevers that we add into, and simple conversation is going to make each client, each situation different, because the conversation...
And I see it as we take them down, and on the way down, the ego part comes up, and it's like, Laura, yes, come with me. And then it will take you somewhere. And it really doesn't matter what I'm saying. I could be reading the phone book. All it did was allow that person to come. I've never had a single patient out of hundreds who had the same experience. So they never came back and said, oh, I went to a garden and I went through the hedge and then I went through up into space and walked on the stars. I've never, ever heard a second person say that. And even if you keep telling them to go through the garden and to go up in the sky and walk on the stars, they don't. They go wherever their mind thinks would be useful for them. It is like an LSD trip without drugs. Someone said, oh, you need psychedelics, you need ketamine, which is very dangerous. Please, no one touch ketamine. But they say you need psychedelics to get these wild experiences in your brain. It's like, oh no, I can do that for you. 45 minutes in, you'll be having some very psychedelic experiences, but it will not include drugs. And so it's a fascinating exploration, and especially for men who might not have done any of this, what they might see as spiritual healing before, and have not used their own body to fix themselves. Women are a bit more open to it, I think, than most men. But then to suddenly be taken on this wild ride in their own mind, then they're hooked.
You had a gentleman, I think it was a military guy or someone, who saw fairy lights and just followed the fairy lights. And I was sharing that with someone the other day. I'm like, yeah, this one person just had these fairy lights and they followed the fairy lights down. And that was for them what was important. So we all create the thing that's important.
I wasn't mentioning fairy lights. I had another one who just said, oh, I had an amazing session. And I was like, oh, really? Did you go into the room and did you see the other part of you across the table? And he said, no, I was this giant squid and I was flying around the moon and it was amazing. And then there was some reason for it, because then when I asked him, did that represent anything? He'd like, oh yeah. And then he explained what it represented. But we're not in their minds. We haven't lived previous 50 years with them. We can get to know them, but we can't know what is most important. So we have to allow their body to take them through their references. If somebody's a big sports fan, it's very likely that they may get messages that are presented in a way that they've got sports lingo, but I don't know that guy's a baseball fan or he's a football fan or anything like that. So I can't create his journey. His body has to create his journey with his own references.
Yes, absolutely. And they do. Everyone is so different and it comes out so differently. And I want to bring this up real quick too. We're going to go here in just a few minutes because we've been talking for a long time. And I so appreciate, I could talk to you for like 7 hours. I think it'd be fine. And it would just be like, oh, what's next? What's next? Speaking of doing that for you, we've talked a lot about doing this in like 6 or 7 sessions or less or more, depending. That's about average is the 6 sessions. But you also now, and I know some other people are talking about doing a single day of, and you kind of mush all the sessions into that one long day, and you are really having a lot of success with that.
Yeah, again, that's something that has come from the past, because in World War I, as I mentioned, they were taking people and giving them 6 hours of hypnosis. And I didn't think that one, it would be very tiring for the hypnotherapist, and I thought maybe it would be too overwhelming for the patient. So I wasn't sure whether that was a good idea or not, but I shared the information. And then I realized that there were other people who were doing something very similar. One of the people on the course said she had a friend who the client moved in with her for 2 days and they did constant therapy. And so I thought, well, why don't I have a go at seeing how it works and whether there is a benefit? And so I did my first client and said, okay, we're going to give it a try, see what we get. And it is an amazing experience for the person, because we do therapy sessions that last about 90 minutes or so, and people reach a certain depth. But there was a guy called John Esdale who used to take people almost into a coma state. But it would take about 3 hours to get there by the amount of relaxation required in the body to get into this point where you could place any part of their body in any position and it would just hang there because they were in such a coma state. And so when I started doing these hypnotherapy days for people who were desperate and didn't feel they could wait between sessions, they're like, I need you to fix it now. And I thought, well, we'll have a go. So I did 3 hours and then they stopped for something to eat and then another 3 hours. And my first client like this actually was a guy who'd been run over by a tank, had a lot of childhood trauma, but he'd been run over by a tank. He was in serious pain and he had serious issues all through his body, but also in his mind. And I took him down and managed to stop these seizures that he was having on a loop every 6 minutes or so. And the minute the seizures stopped, I didn't want to bring him back out because I thought, well, the seizures have stopped and this poor guy's had these seizures for 10 years on a loop every 6 minutes. And so I thought, keep him there. And I kept him there for 8 hours. And he said that over the course of those 8 hours, all the pain that felt like hot oil pouring down his back, that his doctors had said he'd severed his nerves or his nerves were ripped out of his spine. But he said all the pain just like pulled in and went straight into one point on my shoulder. And I could feel this burning hot pain on my shoulder. And he said, I don't know what you were talking about. And Lord knows what I was talking about by then. He said, but this pain intensified in my shoulder to a point that was almost impossible to bear. It was was in one tiny point and then vanished. And when he came out after 8 sessions, he had no pain. And this man had been in serious chronic pain for 10 years since he'd been run over. And from that day forward, he never had another seizure, and he never had any of that pain that supposedly came from nerves being ripped out of his spine. So then I went forward and decided, okay, I'm going to offer this to people who feel I can't wait any longer. Please treat me now. These people go to such deep states in these day-long sessions that and we start at like 1 in the afternoon and we finish at bedtime. And they will think that they're getting the key information in the first 3 hours, and then they'll stop and then they'll go back in, and it's like a light bulb goes off in their head in the afternoon session or the evening session, where it is just everything they ever needed to know is delivered. And this is happening on every session, where suddenly it's a curveball and what they thought was the problem is not the problem, and they just go woo over here and it's something completely different. And I think it's just the depth and the fact there's no time constraints. They can talk as long as they like. They can go down. They can go through these lovely, lovely hypnotherapy sessions, which just feels gorgeous. And then there's no rush, and the ego part doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel it's getting 50 minutes and it's going to get trucked out the door. It's totally, totally focused on for the whole day. And I expected that after that day, people were going to need more support. So I said, okay, well, then I'm going to give you 4 weeks of recordings, and I'll be on the phone for you at any given moment, and anything you need, you just call me. And no, I don't think anyone's bothered using the recordings. They might have listened to their 10-hour session again, but they haven't used the recordings. And when I chase them up and say, you all right? They say, yeah, I'm fine. Everything changed. And so it can be done in that time if people need it. I've had a few people who were quite seriously suicidal. Some had actually attempted suicide. And this session just turned their whole world around, and they came out of it with no talk of suicide again and totally new way forward. So it is worth, if the client really feels that they don't want to spread it over 6 weeks. I think the spreading over 6 weeks is a good thing because it gives you lots of time to think. But if people think they're desperate, you've got to help me and help me now, it's a very good way to do the hypnotherapy.
I love that. And I love that you were willing to work to the needs of your client. You decided to say, okay, let's give this a try. And I think that's amazing. Some people would just be like, no, this is how I do it. No, we're going to work to the client, and we're going to make this work in whatever way it needs to work for you.
As I say, it's still going backwards through the playbook from 1918, isn't it? And there's a lovely novel actually called Regeneration by Pat Barker, and it's set in the hospital where they were doing all this hypnotherapy on people who came back from the First World War. And for anyone who's thinking about hypnotherapy and thinking, really? Do I want to do this? It's a very gentle way to understand what was going on in people's minds and how they ended around.
I always think it's just magic. It's like, it's magic. I don't know. It's just magic.
When I first started, people would say, how does it work? And I was like, I don't know. And I'd say exactly that. It's magic. And they're like, really? And you're a therapist? I said, I'm not a therapist. I'm a TV reporter. But it's magic. Try it out. And I've had trying to get it through to the military to get them to accept it. I've had a lot of them say, but you're a TV reporter. And I was like, yes, but I learned something new. And I think also, I've realized lately there's a huge benefit to being in these professions where you needed to gather information, to talk to people, to learn what's happened, to learn how they're feeling. And so actually being a television reporter was a good lead up to being a hypnotherapist because a lot of the skills are the same.
Yeah. And you yourself spent time in some of those military groups and in that environment.
I was deployed for 2 years to Afghanistan, and I tracked for 2 years before leaving for Afghanistan. So I essentially did a 4-year tour in the military. I'm a bit too leery to actually be in the military. They'd have kicked me out. But yeah, I did my 4 years, and it was certainly a very interesting time. And not just because of the scary moments and the worrying moments and the moments where you don't think you're coming back. It was also just those nights out of bed, grueling training away from your family. When we deployed to Afghanistan the first time, 3 men had babies that day, all of whom were induced because we were leaving at 10 p.m. And 3 of our guys had babies that day and then said to their wives, see you later, and left, and we flew that night. And to me, that was incomprehensible. And some had like 3-week-old babies, 5-week-old babies. And I don't know how they managed that tour. And the Lord knows what the wife was screaming at them down the phone for 6 months. And I don't know how the wife coped with him walking off to war, literally, was still lying in a hospital bed. And people suffer some enormous challenges. And so it isn't only the people who might go out there and be in challenging situations. It's the trail of people they leave behind. You have to deal with it.
Yes, yes. And that's a whole nother conversation that would take us into a whole new thing, but that's the absolute truth. It's not just them. It's not just the person. It's the person that are around them. I had a great conversation with Gareth, actually, about family and how it affects family and friends and all of that. And sometimes they're the ones that we need to work with, too, because they have almost a secondary form of what's happening. They develop their own symptoms and their own issues and things like that.
Gareth did 20 years in the military. And he's one of the Catch PTSD therapists. Yes. He's invaluable for people who are also in the military to be able to work with him. And that is my next book, actually. My next book for hypnotherapy is for the people who have survived living with PTSD sufferers. And I've got PTSD in my family. And as much as I'm a half-decent hypnotherapist and a half-decent therapist, and I kind of know PTSD inside out, I've stood there many a time thinking, what do I do next? What's the right way to behave in this situation? What should I do? What would I advise someone else? I don't know. And if I don't know, having sat with all those people who've explained to me what they would have liked their wife to do or what they would have liked their children, their mother to do or their father to do, if I don't have a clue, how does anybody else? And so it's so hard to deal with people who are being ruled by somebody else inside them that they can't see.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it takes you in a whole direction that you don't need to go mentally, emotionally, all of that. You don't need to deal with that. You don't need to. It can be fixed. It can be eliminated. It can be dealt with. And I so want everyone out there, as many people as we can reach, to be aware of that. So thank you so much for being here, having this conversation with me. I appreciate you taking the time. I know things are crazy. Life is interesting. You're busy, and I appreciate it very much.
Oh, we're only busy pushing stand uphill to get this as known as possible. But thank you for being one of those people who jumped on board. And I hope that we might come back in a year or so's time and we'll have a huge offering and have so much to talk about.
Yes, I hope so too. All right, Change Gang, there you go. And you can go to catchptsd.com and find the information, or on any of those socials that she taught, everywhere. If you put in Catch PTSD, you're going to find it pretty much everywhere. If it's not for you, it might be for someone that you know. So definitely share it, because sometimes it might just be your friend or a family member or someone else. You know someone who knows someone that might need it. So get the word out for us, and I'll definitely be doing that, and I know you will too. Thanks, Sarah.
You're very welcome.
All right, Change Gang, have a good one, and I will meet you same time next week. Ciao. I hope today's episode was interesting and helpful to you in some way. If so, find someone to share it with. Maybe it will help them too. If you'd like to know more about anything discussed here today, you can find all the places to connect with me and the guest speakers in the show notes, or go to lauraordile.com, LauraOrdile.com, and you can reach out to me there. Until next time, ask when you need help, be kind to yourself, and have a happy day.